Bring our soldering station out now. Get set up here, and I'm going to need a number 6 tip. I've got the number 5 in here, but I want a little bit bigger, bushier flame for this, so I'm going to go with the number 6 tip. It's this guy here. Yeah, that's the number 6. Gives me a little more control than having no tip. The flame isn't quite as large and bushy, but that's okay. And let's clean off our block here. Bring in our little flux bowl here. And everything's a good coating of flux. Kind of knock off the excess flux. Turn our tweezer so we can grab this shank. And we're actually going to be using easy solder, so I'm not too worried about crushing the shank. We'll get that down close to where we want it. And then, let's see, I want to locate that join, so I'm going to make sure I don't, the alcohol will actually melt that mark away, and yeah, it's pretty much gone. So we'll orient it here so that that join lines up pointing this way. Now let's see if we can get this position in the right place. Let's bring this side down a little bit so we can line that up a little better. That's pretty close. I need to tilt it just a little bit this way. That's looking good. That's looking good. And we're a little bit proud on this side, so I'm going to bring this just a little bit this way and then push down on this side. Alright, let's check that again. Yeah, that's looking better. That looks dandy. And yeah, that's nice. Okay, so that's in good shape. Let's do a little bit of alcohol here. And let's go to our easy solder. Coffee. Yeah. Let's move in with some pallions of solder here. Yeah, I want some fairly large pieces of pallions of solder here. Fortunately, I do have a few large pieces in here. Did a project the other day where I was closing jump rings, and I used a whole bunch of the little tiny pieces that were in here, so it left me with quite a few large pieces to work with, which are coming in handy at this point. Drop that one. So, yeah, maybe a few more. Some joints you don't want to flood with solder for various reasons, and other joints you definitely do need to flood the joint with a little more solder than you would otherwise. So this is one of those occasions where we want to add more rather than less. It's very difficult to actually get a really good join between this round piece and the shank edges, so we're going to flood that joint with quite a bit of solder. And to do that, let's piece there. I'm not going to use all these pieces of solder, but I'm going to use quite a few. Push that flux out of the way there. And I dropped that piece. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to wind up with 4 large pallions of solder on this one side. Just tease that into position there. I want it to actually lay across that gap. Okay, let's position this side up. Push that down and smush the flux out of the way. It's good to have flux, but at your solder, you don't want a lot of flux around your solder. You do need a little bit, obviously, to help clean the solder and the surface to keep it from oxidizing while you're actually heating it. So that's 4 pieces, but they're not as large as the other side. Let's go with one more piece here. Got rid of just one more in there. There we go. Alright, now since we've been poking around on it here, it's always a good idea just to get back here, take another peek at it, make sure we're actually lined up properly. And I see that a little bit this way, so this whole thing just go that way just a little bit. There we go, I'm liking that. Okay, let's check it on this edge. And if you need to make any adjustments to it, now is the time to do it. And now the whole thing needs to come this way just a little. Alright, pretty happy with that. So, hold this aside for now. A little shot of coffee for fortitude. And easy solder, my favorite. And you see we're getting a nice big bushy flame there, so we should be able to cover the whole thing in a nice reducing flame, limit the amount of oxides we create. And the hottest part of your flame obviously is right here at the tip of the blue, and that's also where the unburnt fuel starts to run out of oxygen. And so you want just a kind of a yellow tip on the tip of your blue if you're going for an oxidized or a reducing flame. And let's begin heating this. We'll just kind of go around the whole area. I'm not really playing it on the piece itself, I'm just kind of going around. Let's get our soldering pick in hand here. See it's starting to bubble a little bit, so we'll back off. Don't want my solder getting displaced by all this. And I've got a couple pieces of piece of solder that actually jumped out. Put it back up there. There we go. starting to get close. I want the bezel to heat up as well, so I play in underneath here to put some heat on that bezel, and I want everything to just flow on the ring itself. Everything needs to get up to soldering temperature at the same time, so heating that bezel is a little bit of a problem in this configuration, but it can be done. Okay. Let's bring the bezel up. And this side's good. This side is a little bit more. Overheat it just a bit. Okay. May end up having to add a little bit more, but I think solder's pretty much flowed down where we wanted it to be. And is that hot? Yes, it is. Alright, let's get our cheater here. Put that in the pickle. Give that a moment in the pickle. Any more pallions on here, so there's nothing to put away exactly. We can get our sawdust out here. When I bezel set stones, I like to put just a small layer. If it's a tight fit, I like to put just a thin layer of sawdust under it. Gives a little bit of cushion to push down against. When you're doing a bezel setting, you wind up with what's called memory in the metal. In other words, every time you bend it, it springs back a little bit. And in a circular pattern like that, the edges all push against each other and it pushes everything back out a little bit. So if you're just pushing down against a stone, you need the stone to be able to move down out of the way a little bit so that you can actually overbend it, so when it springs back a little bit, the stone then gets pushed back up against it. If you can't overbend the metal, you're going to wind up with a loose stone. So a little bit of sawdust under the stone. Now, I've heard some people say that the sawdust will rot. Rot only occurs when something's wet continuously. Rings generally, they stay dry. They may get wet occasionally, but they're not going to be wet all the time. You're not going to get fungus on wood that's not wet. So dry wood will last for many, many years. So I don't worry about using sawdust to back my stones. If you're concerned about your sawdust rotting, use something else. Okay, let's inspect our work. Dry it off here. And I want to get all of the water out of the way. Water can make you think you're seeing things that you're not seeing, so I keep a duster around to blow water out of the cracks and crevices. It's a keyboard duster. It's just CO2 in a can. So let's have a look. Oh yeah. We have completely filled. So that looks good. Now let's see how we did for spacing and setting. That all looks really good. Side to side, we're off just a little bit. We can tune that up with mandrel actually, but I'm happy with the soldering job, so we can put the soldering station in. And I'm through soldering for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my gases off. And then I'm going to crack my valves open just a little bit and take the pressure off of the lines. It's always a good idea to relieve the pressure on your lines. For one thing, your hoses will last a lot longer, and the other is if it pops, it'll just leak the gas out anyway. So you might as well take the pressure off of it. You're not going to lose that much gas. It's usually, I think I've got a 15-foot hose set here, and it holds very little gas anyway. So, all right, we wanted to bend up on this side just a little bit. Let's take this up on the mandrel. Force it up there a little bit and see how that did for, yep, that leveled it out. Oh, nice. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now, looking at it, let's check our the amount of bezel we have above the edge there. It looks like we're a little high on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and take that down a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to use this, and I'll actually protect the top of those loops with my hand here. Take the side down a little, even that out until we get a nice flat all the way across. And there I can see, yeah, that's got it all the way across. And just that quickly, we've got it back in shape. Things can move around a little bit while you're doing all your soldering operations. See here that I've actually got solder in that gap there. I don't think I'm going to worry too much about it. Let's see about locking these loops up a little bit. I'm trying to sheet these up a little. Just play them against each other. So, there we go. Pull it down a little bit. Move it down a little so it's pretty close. One more tweak on this side, and I think we'll be there. Okay, that's good. Let's check them side to side, edge to edge now. This side looks good. This side looks good. Up a little bit high there. Pretty happy with that. So, move to our, got a flat spot across the middle here, so it's not quite laying down. I'll check it against my faceted ring mandrel here, and yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, now I did notice that the edges moved just a little bit here, so need to kind of push some metal down so that it moves back into the right place. Brace it against here. I'm just going to kind of push metal towards that gap, trying to close it up. And again, this goes back to the principle of treating metal like dough. You can actually force metal to move just under the surface and actually fill in gaps where you want it to, or take a ding out of metal, that sort of thing. Works great for that. I'm just going to squeeze metal towards the gap that we're trying to close up. That did a pretty good job. We'll take our half round here. And we'll come in here and just kind of blend that in a little bit. One little spot left there. Okay, that's gone away. Let's work on this edge a little bit. Okay. Now at this point I've got a little bit of a lip sticking up right on just where these came together at. So that's going to be uncomfortable, having that sharp lip riding on the top of your finger all the time. In fact, I can feel it already. So let's go ahead and take that out. Make this ring more comfortable to wear. And work on this side a little bit. There's not much metal there, so there's not really that much to take out. We'll just keep rolling it, keep working it. Let's go to the other side and work it a little bit. That's getting closer. Still a little bit sticking up on this side. That's looking pretty good. Now for the final bit, I think I'm going to go to my little drum sander here, and I'm going to use the larger drum, which does not fit my quick change. So you swap out for a number 30 Jacobs here. There we go. Finish the cleanup here with the drum sander. Now I can actually see, look down in there and see where the gap is high. Just get in there. Keep that going inside a little bit. On this side. Okay, that's blended pretty well. Hot. Look here. Yeah, that pretty much blended the whole thing. Okay. Take this side down just a little bit more, I think. Really sharp edge on this side. Okay, happy with that. Let's check our ring for roundness now. If you look at it, that's coming up really close. See that it actually needs to come down just a little bit on this side. Let's grab a small dowel here, chasing hammer, and let's give it a little bit of a tune up here. Just catch it on this side. This side come down just a little bit. Let's see what we got there. Yeah, that did it. Okay, let's check the other side. If you can sight down your ring mandrel, then you've got some point of reference to actually see what's going on. And this side looks good too. Alright, pretty happy with that. A lot of this is just eyeballing it and seeing what needs to be adjusted and then coming up with some kind of way to actually make the adjustment on it. Let's check all this, make sure everything's looking good there. Alright, now is the time to actually take that little burr that we left on the inside of the bezel. Just take your tri-scraper here, put it in there, and we'll make one pass around the inside here. And don't want to take too much off because we're going to need that top edge. Okay, that takes care of it. So no sharp edges left there. I did do a little bit of filing on this. Let's see if we've got we've got a little bit of an edge on there. So let's make another quick pass around the outside here. Take off what little bit of flashing we produced there when we filed that top of the bezel down. This is finicky work. You're trying to keep your file from actually striking anything. It's always easier to prevent damage than it is to try and fix it later, so just take your time. Don't cause any more damage than you need to. And this needs to go back in the pickle for just a minute. Okay, we've got our ring out of the pickle. Pretty happy with the way everything looks. Now before I decide to actually set the stone, we're going to put this through its first polishing. So I'm going to go out to my polishing lathe and give this a quick pass and just see if we've got any fire stain that we need to get rid of. Hopefully not. And we'll see if we need to do any more tuning or any touch up to it as well.